Hello, God bless you, and welcome to episode 44 of Unshackled Life Q&A. My name is Dalen Woodard, and I'm a Bible teacher and assistant pastor at Nacogdoches Christian Fellowship and founder of Unshackled Life Ministries in Nacogdoches, Texas. These Q&As cover questions about God, the Bible, and theology, and we'll examine the questions from a biblical perspective and using biblical thinking, meaning approaching the question from a biblical worldview and using the text in context with the passage where it is found, as well as keeping it in context and agreement with the entirety of Scripture. At the end of the Q&A, I will give you ways to ask your own questions for future episodes. Also, I'd like to thank the person who asked the question we'll be covering today. So let's get to it. Question: how did Moses know Aaron? If Moses was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter as a baby, how did he know Aaron could speak for him? Exodus 4:13 through 17. This is an interesting question that I had never thought about or asked myself before it was brought to me. The first possible answer is that Moses may not have known Aaron or known that he was a good speaker. Moses isn't the one who suggested Aaron. God is. Exodus chapter 4, verses 10 through 17. But Moses said to the Lord, "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, either in the past or since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and of tongue." Then the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Who makes him mute, or deaf, or seeing, or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth and teach you what you shall speak." But he said, "O my Lord, please send someone else." Then the anger of the Lord was kindled against Moses, and he said, "Is there not Aaron your brother the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Behold, he is coming out to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth and with his mouth, and will teach you both what to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and he shall be your mouth, and you shall be as God to him. And take in your hand this staff, with which you shall do the signs." God told Moses to do the talking, and promised him that he would be with him. "I made your mouth," God said, "and I can make it work just fine if you will simply step out in obedience." Moses didn't respond well. Instead, he asked God to send someone else. This is the opposite of an "here I am, send me" heart. I love how Scripture doesn't hide the flaws and weaknesses of the people God used. God then told Moses in verse 14, "I know that he, Aaron, can speak well, and he's coming to meet you and will be glad to see you and help you." Moses' fear and insecurity didn't surprise God or make him have to scramble for an alternative. He had already sent Aaron to meet and help Moses, and now all that was necessary was to add speaking for Moses to what Aaron was already going to do. There's a sermon or three and all that, but I'm not going to chase that butterfly today. The point is that it isn't necessary for Moses to have known anything about Aaron's speaking ability. God knew and told Moses Aaron was a good speaker. But how did Aaron know about his brother? And how did Moses know who Aaron was? Well, the text doesn't say, but this shouldn't stress us out any. We aren't given close to all the details of anyone's life in Scripture, not even Jesus's. Not having all the details of how something came about shouldn't cause us to doubt the validity of the account. There are two possibilities that I see as most likely. Is one of them for sure the answer? No. But both are quite reasonable, and as long as there is a logical, reasonable answer that doesn't contradict Scripture, we can accept that there is an answer and move on, even if we aren't sure what that answer is. One possibility is that they didn't know each other at all. Wait, what? That doesn't make sense. Sure it does. Moses knew he was a Hebrew and adopted. We know that from Scripture. Check out Exodus 2:11 through 15. Common sense would assure us that Moses knew this even if Scripture didn't tell us. Moses was circumcised on the 8th day after he was born, and that would have made him noticeably different from the Egyptian boys he would have grown up with. Even if that was all he knew, it would be enough to let him know that he had family he didn't know. It would be very reasonable to think also that Aaron would have grown up hearing about the story of how his little brother was saved from Pharaoh by being placed in the basket on the Nile and adopted by the daughter of the man whose orders would have meant his death otherwise. If it became known to Pharaoh that his adopted grandson had killed an Egyptian over a Hebrew slave and fled, it's very reasonable to assume that the Hebrews also were aware of the story. Even if Moses didn't know who Aaron was, Aaron likely knew the adopted prince who had fled Egypt was his little brother. All that would be necessary after that is for God to let Aaron know Moses still lived and where to find him. Leaving what Moses knew this vague would make sense with God calling Aaron a Levite, as it's possible that Moses knew he was a Hebrew but didn't know his tribe before that moment. It would also fit with Aaron being happy in his heart to see him. It's pretty easy and common to find stories of siblings separated by adoption to rejoice over finding one another and connecting, even today. But as much as that would be a cool adoption reunion story, and as much as it would work with the text, I don't know for sure that this is the correct answer. I only know it would work and make sense with the text without having to stretch much. About the only thing you would have to assume is that God told Aaron that Moses was still alive, which is a fairly safe assumption since Aaron was coming out to meet him whether they knew each other or not. Some suggest that Moses' mother also acted as his nanny, and her involvement went beyond the probable 2-year span that a wet nurse would serve. That's possible, although it definitely isn't indicated by the text. According to ancient Egyptian sources, wet nurses were honored and usually performed their duties during the first 2 years of a child's life. But there are accounts where pharaohs honored their wet nurses later in life, with at least one pharaoh honoring his wet nurse by including her in his own burial. So it's possible that Moses would have some continued contact with his mother even after being returned to Pharaoh's house, and could have met his brother and sister through her, or at least been told about them. All right, thank you for listening. I hope the answer to today's question helped you in some way. If you have a question about God, the Bible, or theology, you can email your question to dalenwoodard@minister.com. That's DALYNWOODARD@minister.com. Or go to the Unshackled Life Ministries Facebook page and ask there or through DM. Find me, Dalen Woodard, on X, and ask there or reply to this video on YouTube. May the Lord bless you and keep you and give you an ever-deepening hunger for His Word. Help us spread the Word by sharing, commenting, and clicking that like button. Stay up to date on the Q&As by subscribing to this channel. And remember, when you fix your thoughts on God and build your thinking on the foundation of His truth, God fixes your thoughts.